there. I guess you're probably thinking, what now? What now are you doing? I don't see any paint out. Or rather, I see paint out, but it has nothing to do with your deck. Again, I'm just trying to step people through my process of creating this Oracle deck and just kind of seeing how I go about it. So I have spent a lot of time really nailing things down, and in fact, this is all messed up and I need to make sure I don't just repeat myself there. So I've gone through a lot of time getting all of my cards as well as the category that they're in, or suit, so to speak, and then a single keyword. Just again, those aren't locked in because I have time before the deck, before I have to start putting titles on the cards and keywords. But I want to see how these function in a reading. And so I've gotten some scrap paper. This is just cardstock. It was on sale. These pads were on sale for like $5. And it's, you know, not as thick as I would like it to be. But for right now, I didn't really want to print out a test copy, as that would be quite expensive, whereas making this is only going to be like $10 because I may be jiggling and kind of changing things around as I go. So I picked this up, and what I'm doing is just cutting it in half and trimming it a little bit more. And I'm using a different color for each of the categories. So the first section is the journey, and so I have the number of the card, the section that it's in. This isn't necessarily how it's going to be when I make it, but this is just for me. I have the title of the card and the single keyword at the bottom. So I have the third road, the crossroad, the upper world, the middle world, the middle world, the lower world, and then I have the directions, east, south, west, and north. And so those are one color, and they are in how I have that done there. It's kind of extra linen-y on one side and a little smoother on the other. So then I have the section of elements, which I have spirit and fire and air and water and earth. And then I have how those elements are moving. And so I have active and receptive energy there, or movement of the elements. And then I've just done the those are the elementals. This is the energy, or more of the internal energy. And so I have the to be, to feel, to act, to love, to speak, to perceive, and to know. And these are all in another color. And so I'm working my way through my categories. And so I'm going to see when I'm done. I'll come back, and once I finish them all, I may actually be able to get a careful rifle shuffle with them. We're going to see how best it's going to be to shuffle it, but it's just going to give me some ideas and the ability to kind of work with it as I go along, which I did my first test deck for my Lenormand deck when I still had a lot of tweaking of color. I had to do many, many test decks. And it was so wonderful to be able to use it during that process. This will allow me to start using the deck well before that, even as I'm painting the deck. And so I'm really excited about that. So now I'm going to go in the next section of cycles, which has the wheel with the winter solstice and the winter peak, the spring equinox and the spring peak, which is also the cross quarters, the moon cycle, and then the cycle of being as well. So I'm going to do those next, and then I have the world over here. I have the world with trees, plants, insects, reptiles, land animals, water animals, and air animals, one for each of the four elements, reflecting energy from the four elements. So I still have a little ways to go, but I'll come back and well, here, let me just show you what I'm doing here. We'll be all crafty. So this next section, I need quite a few, and so I can cut these about 2 by 2, so to speak. And so just to this particular set of cards has got an extra 1/2 inch, and so I am just, to make it more complicated for myself, I'm just cutting that end off. Now, in hindsight, they did have the same set in 12 by 12 pages, and I could have had them cut them out on my Cricut, but that's okay, because then I'm just cutting it in half, so it ends up, the cards end up being 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half, 3 by 4 and a half. So there I have 4 of the cards, and then I just need to make sure that I write on the correct side, which I did mess up a little bit. So I'm just going to go through and start to work on those, and I'll check back in a little bit. Okay, so you can see on the blank sides I have finished cutting them all out and writing all of their names on. I've actually caught a couple duplicate keywords. You know, it just helps to keep going over these things. So now I'm going to go ahead, let's see, take a test one. I don't know if I want to use the large. Corners. Yeah, I kind of like the look of that actually. So I'm going to go ahead and clip all the corners. This is a, oof, that was a mess up one. So I'm going to go ahead and clip all of the corners here and then be able to have a working, somewhat working. I'll show you, I'll come back and show you when I'm done. I can rifle shuffle this very carefully. So it definitely takes a little carefulness. But my intention is, as I probably have already said, there is a cardstock at my local office store that I can print, and it is very workable. I did tons of readings with my Story in Color Lenormand with it, and it holds up amazingly, but that's going to cost me, you know, $30 to $40, and I didn't want to do that until I had kind of gone through this process where I already found a couple I wanted to change. And so that is the benefit. This is a lot of work, right? Actually, you know, what I've been doing to get to this point has been a lot of hours and a lot of work. But in the end, what I hope pays off in is a system that works really beautiful together, and kind of working out any of the kinks before I start painting, which is, you know, by itself quite a lot of work. And so painting things that I don't end up using or that just don't work, you know, which will happen, I'm sure, but the least of that I can do, the better. And so I also then come into, now I've got a fully envisioned deck right now in my head, and so excuse me, beginning to paint this deck, I feel very invested. I feel very much like I am working on a fully realized deck, and that feels really fantastic, and it's the type of energy that I like to go into painting with. Which is my experience with Lenormand. It was a fully realized functioning Lenormand deck, and I just needed to then express that in color and the movement of paint. And so now, having done all this work, I will be able to go into my Oracle deck with much the same energy. Okay, so I have cut them all out and done all the corners, and so now I have a test deck of my deck. The colors are, I had to do 2 different kinds of greens to get enough for the world section, but at least green in general is the world. This kind of taupey gray color is cycles. The orangey color is the journey. This light gray, I think, is the energy, no, elements. And I don't know, I have another color that is the other. So at least it's, I can kind of, since there's no images here, I can kind of see that. Plus I've also written the suit on the top. Again, not that that's necessarily going to be there for the final deck, but in terms of when I have no images, I think that will help. And this is officially the first pull from my deck. I have the middle world here, or the between, which is from the journey suit. I have to be, which is the energy of grounding for in the energy suit, and in the cycle suit, I have wisdom, or the crone, or the shaman. So being kind of firmly planted in this world, this middle world, even if you have the lower world or the underworld, the middle world, and the upper world, you know, you've got your back against the tree, as like the shaman's supposed to have their back against the tree, and then they journey right from there. They journey upwards or downwards, and so. But I like that idea of having sort of your back to the tree, rooted actually in this world right now, with that sense of grounding, right? Being here, being present, and that's the way right now to use this deck, or to, as I go forward perhaps with this deck, towards using it with wisdom, is to kind of be rooted here and now. I have a lot to do before this deck is completed. I have now, if I keep everything as is, which I'm kind of liking everything here, I have 73 cards. So 73 paintings, even though of course these are not intricate paintings. These are, for the most part, washes similar to my Lenormand, so that certainly doesn't make it anything as difficult as some decks, but it's still 73 paintings to do. So it's like, okay, you've got a lot to do. Stay present and sort of one step at a time. And that's the road to wisdom. So anyways, just another little snippet. I feel like now between, I'll clean up. I did make some changes as I was going through this. I saw some things that needed to be fixed. So I'll kind of update my spreadsheet here, and I will literally, I'm kind of done with all this pre-work, and I am ready to roll into painting. Ah!